Darren, Carrie, John, Terence and Zoe. 5 beautiful souls gone too soon, were the best friends I could ever dream of in the tenderness of my teenage years. At first there were only 5 of us, living in the small town of cop lights and hanging out in the streets every day. Darren being my closest friend. We were introduced to each other at the age of 7 by our respective mothers, immediately highlighting the odd resemblance in our names, since mine is Alan. From that moment, a great and genuine friendship between Darren and I began and blossomed over time. 2 months before the incident, a new family settled in the city, and Carrie joined our small group. A bunch of buddies I've always seen as a blessing, sent to further brighten my life and complete the perfect picture of my teenage life. A tight-knit group that I believed to be indestructible, but I did not know that on July 16th, 2005, the worst was finally going to happen. Under a starry sky that night, when it was already getting very late, we strolled through the bright, deserted streets, making a lot of noise, like any group of carefree teenagers would, before we sat on the stairs of a small, unfinished house near the industrial area. We were in an empty new neighbourhood that was due to be populated very soon, and lots of buildings were still under construction. Carrie and I were taking a selfie as we felt the vibrations of Terrence's big boom box pass through our feet. He was doing funny dance moves a few feet away from John, Zoe and Darren, engaged in a fun and passionate conversation. Cigarettes and joints lit, we were smoking and conversing to spend a little more time outdoors and together. Suddenly, Terrence stopped, so I went to check his boombox as if something was wrong with the radio, looking at it from several angles. The music was obviously stopped. To remedy this, he first removed and then reinserted the compact disc into the device, but to no avail. Then he tinkered a bit, but pressing several buttons, and finally went as far to remove a few batteries from the device, before jumping back in fear, when he noticed that his boombox was still functioning. Something had replaced the music. Something terrifying. And then we all froze in front of the strange phenomenon. Terrence then looked at us one by one, his hands raised in questioning, as if to ask us what was happening. After several seconds of listening, John approached the radio with the firm intention of turning it off. I could see the look of exasperation on his face as he kicked the device to no avail. I don't know if fear is contagious, but what I saw in Zoe's eyes, I got the distinct impression that we shouldn't be present at this time and place. "The hell is this thing? It's messed up, bro. You should get it fixed," John said to Terence, continuing to knock on this device. "Messed up? Not even in a dream. But Papa might be interferences or something. You talk about satanic gibberish? It's probably some kind of stupid joke. It's obvious." Terence answered him with a smile, true to himself, trying to ease the atmosphere. Following his remarks about the event, I saw his smile disappear as quickly as it appeared, when a deafening noise suddenly escaped from the boombox. We all took a few steps back, staring at the device, eyes filled with horror. John, who was closest to her, covered his ears while wincing in pain. We could all feel the vibrations under our feet as the noise escaping from the device was loud. At this point, I'm more than sure we're all ready to run away and leave the radio there at that place. But no sooner had I nurtured the idea myself that the noise finally stopped. I can't remember who broke the silence, as we're all so shocked by what we had just experienced. But in any case, Zoe was so scared that she wanted us all to go home. No one opposed this idea. In addition, we were sure that the noise had alerted the night watchman, who had to watch the surroundings. Along the way, we all avoided talking about it, not because we were still terrified, but more for the sake of maintaining our sanity. True to himself, Terence started joking, and in no time, this bizarre offence and all the unease was behind us. We were back to being normal, loud teenagers talking about everything and nothing. However, less than 10 minutes later, Everyone else started walking and simultaneously pulled their phones out of the pocket. The screens of their smartphones were red and flickering. When I felt the vibrations of my phone in my pocket, I pulled out my device too. I myself facing the same scary event. I still remember Kara's look of terror as she put her hand over her mouth, shaking and staring at her phone screen. Damn, that's him. He's the same guy as earlier on the radio, Darren said. How the hell did he do that? How does he know our names? Without a word, Zoe raised a shaking hand and pointed to something or someone right in front of us. When they saw him, they all started staring back. Slowly, their eyes riveted on the path, as if they feared a threat sauntering in our direction. All but me, because whatever they saw, I was the only one who didn't see it. I then began to look at the path in front of me and my friends, behind me several times, completely overwhelmed by what was going on. Then at one point, I stared at Darren, questioning him with my gaze, and as he understood her, "Can't you see that thing over there, dude? Move," he said in complete panic. Is he a man? What the fuck is this? So he said, on the verge of tears. Puzzled, I looked down the path again, without seeing anything suspicious or dangerous. I turned to my friends once more, and this time, as they continued to back away and yell at me to move, they were frantically pointing at someone or something in front of us who had apparently kept approaching. Looking at the path again, I once again didn't see what they all feared. The response pissed me off, and to be honest, Down had played a lot of pranks on me before. Now I think about that moment, I really wish it was or yet another prank from him. Sadly, that wasn't the case, and nothing could have prepared me and all of my friends for the real horror that was about to unfold. Blind to the threats my friends dreaded, and persuaded that they were all playing a prank on me, I sinned angrily, ready to let them know that I didn't find it funny at all. But instead of just seeing my friends continuing to back away, I saw Darren, Carrie, Terrence and Zoe running towards where we had come from, as an invisible force lifted and held John in the air by his neck. With both hands he desperately tried to grab hold of what was squeezing his neck, in vain, before he got mercilessly slashed. As if caused by a very sharp blade, gushes just appeared on his torso, tearing his shirt and cutting deep into his flesh. With an outstretched arm in my direction, I saw him trying to cry out for help, looking at me with eyes filled with a mix of pain and terror. Since he was only a few feet away from me, each hit he received made blood squirt, and each time I felt a few drops settle on my face. Frozen at first for a few seconds in front of the horrible spectacle, I then turned, running in the opposite direction. Every time I think about it, I feel like the biggest coward, because I just ran away, when he was clearly needing and asking for my help. I wish I could have died in John's place, but panic and fear filled me from the nightmare I witnessed. I just started running unconsciously, just to put considerable distance between me and this entity that was invisible to me. I hid in a dimly lit alley between a tractor and a pile of bricks, catching my breath before thinking about how I was going to get out of there. My parents, the police, I thought, before I quickly looked at my phone, which is still in my hand the whole time, without me even realizing it. Losing my mind to terror seemed like the only thing to do when I saw my phone's all red screen flicker with no way to contact anyone. Tears of pure despair then escaped my eyes, streaming very gently down my face. The only option I had was to get out of that area, and hopefully I might find the others. Or maybe I was going to run into one of the night watchmen, and he and his colleagues were going to rescue us all. However, I was paralyzed with fear, unable to bring myself to come out of my hiding place, and praying that this thing was invisible to me would not find me. Crouched, with my head in my hands and my eyes closed, I was shaking uncontrollably, trying to breathe less heavily as I rocked back and forth for at least half an hour. All of a sudden, and if her hands gripped me, without even asking myself any question, I began to struggle and even thought of grabbing one of the bricks from the pile right next to me to defend myself. Fortunately, I quickly realized it was Zoe. She was shaking and completely covered in blood. "Oh my God, they're all dead, Alan, they're all dead," she kept repeating, sobbing. A great void then invaded me following these words. With my eyes on the ground, I was starting to accept the idea that we were certainly next on the list of that bloodthirsty thing. Psychologically defeated and totally broken, I was not even able to comfort Zoe, still causing her hysteria. So, as if to show that we only had the two of us in our last moments, I hugged her. Against all odds, I calmed her down. At least a little, for a short time. A few seconds later, Zoe suddenly stood up. Her eyes were riveted on the end of the driveway behind me, pointing at something in that direction, all shaking and stepping back. I looked in the direction she was pointing without seeing anything. It was starting again. The thing had found us. When I looked at Zoe, she screamed, pulled her phone out of her pocket, and looked at it with more fear in her eyes before dropping it to the floor. Her phone screen was all red and flickering. She covered her eyes and started stomping on it as hard as she could. She then gradually looked up, way above me, and I was thinking with my wild imagination that the threat had taken off or had grown incredibly large. I tried in vain to see even a shadow, the bit of what terrified her, without the slightest success. Just as I looked at Zoe again, she turned and started running in the opposite direction, but quickly stopped because she'd seen something else on the other end of the driveway that I still couldn't see. She then began to look at the two ends in turn, and repeatedly like someone cornered by two attackers with no possibility of escape. Her expressions and actions absolutely terrified me, because I couldn't see the trap closing in on us. Zoe climbed onto the tractor in a desperate attempt to get away from the danger, all while crying and begging. Oh my God, no," she cried out over and over. Tears streamed down her face as she covered her ears. She then suddenly froze, as if paralyzed by something, and looked at me before quietly letting her very last word escape from her mouth. "Run." The sight of her being lifted up right afterward paralyzed me completely, and I felt my blood freeze in my veins. Before my eyes, she first got slashed 5 times deep down her torso in a strange way, as if her assailant was drawing some kind of symbol while slaughtering her. And she got stabbed once in the middle of her chest. At that moment, I saw her vomit countless insects. I didn't see clearly what they were, cockroaches maybe, but I saw them come out of her mouth, before what was attacking her released its grip and let her collapse onto the roof of the tractor. I had nightmares about her for years. Zoe's eyes turned completely white, plunged into mine when her body fell on the tractor, while the insect still came out of her half-open mouth. I started running again and again without stopping, or really knowing where I was going. During my escape, I came across the body of one of the night watchmen. He had similar wounds on his torso, and also there were several insects also around his corpse, as well as his phone a few ways away from its old red screen flickering. Covered in sweat, my legs getting heavier with each stride, I ran until I finally reached the road. Everything around me seemed to have frozen in time, realizing that I was the only one alive at the moment, though maybe not for long. Although I was finally out of the future new neighborhood, but still, I was still convinced that this thing, if there is only one, would surely go to chase me to the ends of the earth if I had to. And to be honest, once again, I didn't have the strength to flee any further. So, I began to walk very slowly, in the middle of the road, with my eyes riveted straight ahead, expecting to finally see this assailant, or to be suddenly slaughtered, without even noticing the threat. There was not a cat outside, as usual in the late hours of the night in this small town where nothing normally happens. I was sure I was going to die in no time. So I found it really pointless to try finding help. However, help came to me, appearing behind me in the form of the headlights of a car that seemed to drive at full speed. Still in a daze, I continued to walk without even caring, until I felt a strong grip on my left arm. Hey, didn't you hear me? Can you hear me? Are you okay? Asked the policeman before he looked even more dismayed. You're just a kid. What happened to you? He added, before bombarding me with many more questions. I gently put my hands over my ears before shaking my head to let her know I was deaf. I then calmly put 2 fingers over my ears before placing them on my lips to let her know that I could read lips. I don't know if he really understood, but all he could say afterwards, okay, you'll come with me, okay? I'll take you to safety. Come with me. No need to explain in detail what followed. The medical care, the hours of questioning with the police and other units, the fruitless investigations, the media interest and all the rest. I later learned from very discreet and hidden sources that identical murders, called witchcraft murders, had been committed for decades and were still unsolved until now that I'm writing this. They're consistently covered every time they happen to avoid panic, but I think everyone needs to know. And even though the public in their ignorance thinks that I was just a crazy and traumatized teenager with too much imagination, that even probably smoked excessively that night, I know what I saw. Then it was real, on you and me. You wasn't the work of a mad killer, because mad killers aren't invisible. After thinking about it for a long time, I finally realized I'm the only one who survived. All these victims of witchcraft murders were massacred because they heard it, through their radios, phones, or other devices. This is also why my friends, for example, could see their executioner. I could not see anything because I had not heard it. I hadn't heard the voice of evil. My deafness had actually saved my life. My girlfriend and I wanted to test how much distance our relationship can take. We both thought that our relationship was so strong that being away from each other over long distance wouldn't affect us, unlike other couples. So, my girlfriend moved to another house on another street, and it didn't affect our relationship in any way, and everything was still normal. We still went out on dates and made time for each other. It was great to have some space. Then my girlfriend moved again. We went on to live in another town to test distance against our relationship. And to be honest, we were both still going strong. We spoke to each other and went out to places together, and everything was just fine. I enjoyed seeing her, and she enjoyed seeing me, and it seemed like the distance made our relationship much more stronger than ever before. It sort of made us both notice each other a bit, because living together can make one become invisible by seeing each other every day. There's always something to talk about when distance is involved in a relationship. Then, my girlfriend moved to another country to test our relationship even more with distance, and I've got to be honest, even though she was in another country, it still made our relationship so much stronger. I couldn't believe that our relationship could withstand such, and other couples couldn't manage anything. It was incredible how strong our relationship was, and we still talk on a weekly basis to catch up with whatever's been going on between. It's great to have this space between us and still be in a relationship. Then, one day I heard my girlfriend calling my voice in the air as things were moving around in my house. It's quite scary. And then I saw a pen starting to float in the air. I started writing something on the wall. It read, "I am your girlfriend, and I wanted to test our relationship with even more distance. Now we are so far away that I'm in the afterlife, and you are in the living world. But our relationship is still going." I couldn't believe that my relationship with my girlfriend so much more distance now. With my girlfriend in the afterlife and me being in the world of the living, we're still both going strong, no matter the huge. I can't believe just how strong our relationship. And just as when I thought my girlfriend couldn't create any more distance between the both of us in our relationship, she now contacted me from another universe. She has managed to create more distance in our relationship to keep on testing our relationship. But we are both still going strong. Everyone's just kidnapping each other, and I don't always go. I remember eating breakfast at home, and my whole family were there as well. Then someone put a bag over me, and I was taken to a place I've never been. When the bag was taken off my head, I was in a room with other kidnapped. Our kidnapper looked stressed and worried. Then a couple of hours later, our kidnapper got kidnapped as well, and we all made a run for it. And when we were trying to get home, I got kidnapped again and got put in a room with other kidnapped. Then my new kidnapper received a phone call and he started to cry because his own family had been kidnapped and none of us showed sympathy towards it. Then some other people in the room with me started to get kidnapped. Then my second kidnapper got kidnapped. It's this horrible cycle of everyone, whether that be perpetrator or victim, being kidnapped at some point. I kept getting abducted again and again and being placed in a new place with other people who had been abducted. Our abductor will either be abducted again or his family and friends will also be. To reduce the amount of times of being abducted, you had to abducting and place them in empty houses or buildings. This did reduce the amount of times I got abducted. But when people that I had abducted were abducted again, while I did everything I could to keep them in a room, it was impossible to keep everyone you abducted. We were all. I remember kidnapping another person, and then I received a phone from a random stranger telling me that my brother. I started to. That the guy I had kidnapped showed me no sympathy. Then the guy I had kidnapped took advantage of me while I was in an emotional state and kidnapped me and put me in some room. When my now newly turned kidnapper then got, I just walked out of the house, no care in the world of being kidnapped or kidnapping another. Whenever I was the abductor, I would always get a phone call from a stranger who will update me on the latest situation with my family, and I will always start to. The people I abduct never show some, and they've been abducted. Then, after being an abductor for a while, I'll then be abducted. It's a vicious cycle. I guess it's a for all then now. The job agency I'm part of finally found work for me after months. I've borrowed so much money, so much unpaid rent building up. I was grateful for whatever job. The job was simple, and I was going to be working with another guy called. Our job was to stop a guy called from going into work too early. Andy has this who goes into work 2 to 3 hours early. His family, friends, even his managers are worried for. Me and Peter would arrive at us, and we would basically stop him from going to work. And Andy does the night shift where he starts at 10 p.m. and finishes at 8. When co-working, he's fine, and when we first got started on the job, we didn't really know how to stop from going into work. We would do everything we could verbally to stop him, and it even went as far enough to shouting and swearing at Andy to not going to work far too early. When me and Peter failed, we got bollocking not far, and then we decided to step up our game to stop Andy going into each 3 hours. So we decided to strap him to and only lay him out is just the screams Andy would let out were nerve-wracking, and it slipped right into the. Then he started vibrating, and I literally mean his whole body started vibrating. Andy's face tin started to change shape a little bit, and it was really off. When me and Peter unstrapped him, Andy quickly got ready for work, and this time he was only an hour early for work instead of 2 to 3 hours. Our managers congratulated, but still demanded. So we did better by strapping Andy to his bed, and the longer we strapped Andy to his bed, the more unusual things he would start to do. He would start speaking languages I had never understood before, and his body was vibrating even more. His face, it was changing. When we unstrapped Andy and he got ready for work, he was only half an hour early. Our manager didn't congratulate me, but rather ordered us to do better, and this pissed me. I decided to make Andy late for, and I didn't unstrap Andy until it was time for him to go into. Andy now didn't seem, and he was floating in the air while vibrating and speaking in a non-human language. He literally ripped off and ran to work without. Andy didn't get into trouble for being late, as he had a proper excuse for being late, which was me and Peter. And Andy had. I joined a gym a couple of months ago, and like all gyms, they give you a free month. It was fantastic, as they had all the latest equipment, swimming pools, boxing equipment, and many classes. I enjoyed my free month, and I knew that the next time I had to come in, they would ask me to sign up a monthly contract, which I was happy to do. When I went into the gym, the owner came up to me, and with a smile on his face, he said, "Hey Jake, how's it going? Ready to start your free month?" I was so confused. My name was Eric, and I'd already done my free month, but I'd gladly accepted it. It was burning in my mind how I was now Jake, when I'd been Eric all my life. But what if I'd always been Jake? As usual, I'd enjoyed my free month, and was ready to join the gym officially. I kept having to remind myself that I was Jake, and not Eric. When I entered the gym, after another free month expecting to now sign up, the gym owner came up to me with a smile on his face and greeted me by saying, "Hey Paul, ready to start your free month?" I was even more confused now, because I swear that my name was either Jake or Eric, and it really started to get to me. I did my free month, but my mind was plagued by who I really was. Everyone in the gym was also calling me Paul now, when before it was Jake. Before that it was Eric. The day's definitely not repeating itself, as the days are moving forward, but I'm seriously confused about who I really am now. I looked in the mirror, and I demanded that I was Eric. I allowed everyone in the gym to call me whatever, and I was always doing my free month at the gym again. And now Marty, who was just starting his free month at the. In the end, I didn't mind it. But when I went into work, the manager who I'd worked for 5 years straight had greeted me like a newbie starting on his first week on the job. And he called me Brian. And I definitely started questioning who I was, because I was sure that I'm Eric, but at work I'm not Brian starting out on his first week. The week after, the manager had greeted me again as a newbie, starting out on his first week, but now called me Stanley. Evil people are always the kindest, and how I know this? Because I'm. Here's what I mean. When I want to murder someone, I can't help but show them so much kindness. Take Randall for instance. I invited him into my home, and I made him a fresh meal from scratch. Randall was so grateful for it, as he never has time to. And as I watched him eat, I started to cry, because Randall didn't know that it was his last, as I was going to murder him. I let him sleep in the spare room, and I hugged him before he went to sleep. He was unknown to Randall that he was going to die at my hand. It was the last time someone would ever hug him, or for him to fall asleep. I murdered him that night. Then another time, a guy named Takami was grateful towards as I took him to a theme park. I took pictures of him on rides and in swimming pools. I started to cry again, because Takami had no idea my intentions of murdering him that. Takami asked if I was okay, and I just told him that I was having such a good time. I made up a lie, saying the theme park brought back memories of me and my dad. I brought back so much food for Takami to eat, and this nearly made me cry again. As unbeknownst to Takami, it was his last. I hugged him, asked him if he wanted anything else. But Takami, being a gentleman, didn't want me spending any more money on him. This made me chuckle a bit. Fulani had no idea I was going to murder him, and I wanted to make sure he had as much fun and as much food as possible. I murdered Tsukami when the theme park hints were closed and near to the bin areas. I cried when I observed Tsukami's murdered body, and all I could think to myself is that Tsukami should have accepted more kindness from me in the form of food and fun. Just recently, I see my mother was happy that I would babysit her child, and I cried inside because she had no idea I was planning on murdering the child. Before murdering her child, I planned on giving the child his last great meal and lots of fun times in the form of computer games and music. Every time I see the single mother's child enjoying himself at my house, I start to cry because he has no idea he's going to die. Every time I see the single mother walking away as she drops her child off at mine, I start to sob, as she has no idea what I'm going to do. I prefer to have all of the curtains inside my house closed instead of open, and it should be a simple thing to get done. But there is a man out there who will go blind if I close the curtains. I close the curtains around 9 p.m, and it's something I have recently started doing, as I've never closed the curtains in the past before. Then the next day, the sun was shining, I opened all of the curtains. This man then knocked on my door. When I opened it, he had this look of desperation on his face. He knew that I had closed the curtains at 9 p.m, and opened them at 7 a.m. And the reason he knew is because he goes blind when the curtains close in our house. It's only our house, and nobody else's house that he needs the curtains to be open. And he kept on telling me about how he hated going blind. He hates not seeing my mother going through her phases of bipolar depression. He hates not seeing my father trying to hunt ghosts, but instead starts attacking the walls and cupboards. He hates not seeing my little brother failing in life by just doing nothing all day. The most important thing he hates not seeing is how my family will ask our bruises on our bodies as to where they came from. When I blinded this man by closing the curtains in my house, he was so worried about our bruises. He himself wanted to know where we got our bruises from, and even asked my bruise on my arm where it came from. "Where did you come from, Bruce?" the man asked, and he told me that he enjoys to be up to seals, asking our bruises and cuts where they came from. This communication is key in life. Then my bruise started to talk, and it hurts so much, and like Bruce told this man, I was formed when the mother hit the boy's arm. My bruise was right, it had formed when my mother hit my arm. My other bruise though on my leg told the man, I don't know where I came from. And then I promised the man I wouldn't close the curtains. Then another night I'd forgotten my promise and closed all the curtains, and the man came to visit me. He asked me why I'd closed the curtains while knowing it blinds him. I tried to apologize, but he wasn't having it. I couldn't see your father fighting thinner, nor could I see your mother having a breakdown. I couldn't see all of you talking to your bruises and asking where I came from. And I couldn't see anything at all. Then I fell and only got up when my sight came back at 7 a.m. due to your curtains being opened. The man told me. I die, be careful. I'm just so happy, and I don't know why. I'm easily very grumpy. A couple of months ago, I awoke completely happy for some reason, and anything that used to bring me agony or sadness just increased happiness. Most of you will think that happiness alone is a good thing, but you need that balance of negativity and sadness. I started to become more erratic as my happiness kept on increasing, and I broke objects and I was shouting incoherent words to express and exert all that happiness. It kept on increasing, and my family were becoming scared. Then, as my happiness grew, I became almost radioactively toxic towards my family, and all of that extra happiness started to affect their health. Their skin started to rot away. And as I saw my family disintegrating, I still just kept on becoming more and more happy. All of that positivity starts to erode everything around me, even my house. Objects crumbled and electronic gadgets heated up, but I was still so happy that I yearned for some sadness and some negativity. I needed something to balance the happiness that was growing inside of me like cancer. I tried watching the news on TV, and I watched all the people I had kidnapped rotting away in my cellar to try and instill a good amount of negativity to balance the ever-increasing happiness growing within me. Nothing worked, and I can feel that I'm going to reach a tipping point when all that happiness is going to come out as an explosion. I tried to kill more people and basically cause more misery around me, but the happiness is still growing. And even though I look happy, the pain is immense. They all think I'm a sociopathic psychopath. I just want it to end and never be happy again.